Hey everyone, let me get Somi on. Let me see. Oh, let me see. Hey everyone. So today Somi and I will be doing a Q&A. We already have some questions that were asked of us. Hi Somi.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I was just explaining to everyone what today was.
Okay, sounds
Uh,
good.
yeah. So Somi and I will be answering some questions. You are able to ask questions here live, and I also have some that were written to me, and I think Somi has some too. So, you just want to jump in, Somi, or?
Uh, well, first, how are you feeling today? Let's kind of do a check-in. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, for the audience too, it's just nice to I always find that sometimes we skip over just checking in with each other and sometimes we have that our go-to word, which is fine. And just remembering that we are in COVID, and COVID has brought on a lot of different emotions and different things for us. And we're still in COVID, and every day is a different day to navigate. So it's always good. Today, I had to remind myself to check in with a lot of people I know. Just one good question I've asked lately is, how's your heart? Which is catches people off guard, because it's not how are you doing or how are you feeling, it's how's your heart. So
Right. Well,
let's go ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna say yesterday, I took a very much needed mental health day, and I'm also taking one Friday because it's just a double dose kind of week.
I'm so proud of you and absolutely love that, because the truth of the matter is, when we first met, mental health days and breaks were like taboo. You were
I'm
like,
like,
what do you mean?
no.
I need to pour into myself. I need to have some self care. What are you talking about? But that's a whole different other conversation. So let's,
Right,
self care is important. The mental health breaks are so important. As many as you need during the week, during the day,
right.
are important. So,
That was
so let's.
actually one of the questions was, what does a mental health day look like?
Oh, well.
I had trouble with this in the beginning too, on what it was supposed to look like. I thought I was supposed to sit around all day, but actually, somebody taught me it's whatever you love to do.
Okay. So let's look at your mental health day yesterday. How
Uh,
did what did that look like yesterday?
so for me, I mean, this might not be a mental health day for everybody, but for me, it was focusing on some issues that I have with my Kaya, my service dog in training,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I love training and love being with my animals and stuff. So for me, that was very relaxing. Um, One of the perks of having a dog in training is having them learn the art of doing nothing. So there was a lot of sitting around too and just taking it in our
So
surroundings.
can we briefly explore that, because I think that's where people get stuck when it comes to
Mhm.
mental health breaks and mental health, just self care, is our phrasing or our programming and conditioning of the word, using the word, the art of doing nothing. So when you say that, I know for a lot of people, and even me many, many years ago, we are a hustle bustle society. If you're not hustling, if you're not doing, you're not doing anything.
Right.
And I remember, gosh, I want to say 15 years ago, I was probably, no, it's more, a little less, more than that. I don't want to tell my age. It's definitely more
Don't do
than that.
that.
No, that's not true. So it's about 20 years ago. I'm going to be 42 soon. So 20 years ago, I remember I started my mindfulness yoga practice. And one of the things that I had to learn was the art of being and not doing. So we're
Right.
doing nothing, because when you phrase it that way, you sound like you're a couch potato.
Right.
You're not doing anything. You're wasting away your life or whatever the case may be. And I'm like, no, that's not what it is. We're talking about go shifting from a space of you're doing to a space of being. We are human beings and
Yeah.
still are. But how can you be if you're always doing? It's like a car that never stops running. That
Right.
car is going to break down at some point in time. And I know for a fact that's what we're seeing a lot of times in our society is people have been running and doing and going and going and going. And, one of the things that COVID did, at least here in New York, was there wasn't any going. And there wasn't a lot to do. Everything was shut down from March to June practically. And people are like, well, wait a second. What do I do? And I say, there's lots to do. There's time for
Right.
you. There's time to connect with, if you have children, I have a son. There's time to learn new skills, things that you have been putting off for a long time. There's so much of being instead of just doing. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And that was one of the questions, because I think there's a misconception of when you take time to fill your cup and to pour
Right.
into yourself, it's misconstrued as you are doing nothing.
Well, when I first got home and you had these days of mental health days for me, I learned a lot of games, that's for sure. Because I didn't have the business at the time or anything, and I wasn't able to do the things I usually did. So I learned a lot of card games and all that. But now, um, knowing what I know now about mental health days, it truly does help doing other things that you don't usually get the time to do because you're such in a hustle and bustle,
Mm-hmm,
or actually spend and focus on that.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it ties into just mindfulness, being a bit more mindful in your being, and
Hmm.
even sometimes being mindful in your doing. So it kind of slows things down a bit so that you are a bit more focused. You have clarity in mind and body and spirit. You're feeling rejuvenated. A lot of us are operating from nothing.
Right.
We are beyond like expending emotion, energy, all of that. And so we're operating from depletion, which, think about that. Who suffers?
Right.
If you are depleted, who's suffering? You're giving, or doing, and you're operating from this place of depletion all the time. So I tell people it's not even just like some people say, I don't have time to take a day. I'm like, okay, but we can steal different moments in our day,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, and it probably lead to another question that you had about grounding exercises.
Yes.
So do
So
you want to, go into that a little bit?
yeah, so we got a lot of questions about what is grounding. And I've learned all this terminology from Somi, so I just use it like everybody else does. And I think everybody, but it's not the truth because I didn't know it in the beginning and all that. But grounding is something that you do. For me, it was for my PTSD episodes, to bring me back into the present. But somebody's taught me that it's not just for PTSD episodes; it's just for everybody, and it's just being in the present. Am I right, Somi?
Yep, yep. It's about bringing yourself back to the present moment. And I'm so glad you mentioned that about it's not about trauma and PTSD or mental illness, or we're talking mental wellness here. We're talking about how do you stay present in your everyday life. Again, so the cricket, my son actually, of which you guys have a very unique and special relationship. Um, when I had my son, and I say this for anyone that has a child or a parent, children, if you let them, will bring you to a state of presence that you have never, for most of us, we've never experienced before, because for them, everything is right now. It's not in the past or in the future, it's in this present moment. And so the first time I realized, I was like, and at the time, I didn't even have the correct language for it. And I had been in the mental health field, gosh, since 2001 or so by then, or
I
even,
was 2.
say it again.
I was 2 years old.
Hey, don't make me feel so old. um, but I had my son, and one of the things that I was very intentional with my son was I was going to pour into him. I was going to be very present. I remember it was when I was pregnant with him that I decided that I was going to go into business for myself, because at that time I was working at a psychiatric facility for children and adolescents. And I was literally working like 100 hours a week because there was so much trauma and so much need. And I'm a giver and I want to help and be there for them. And I was just like, I need to be here for this child. So I remember once I got pregnant, I was like, okay, we have to make some shifts here. And I know that everybody can't do that. So I'm not saying this to say, this is what everybody needs to do. I'm just giving practical, experiential situations. And so with that, when he was born, I remember, I want to say he was about 2 or 3 months. And I took him to a park. I mean, we'd gone to the park many times, but this time around, something inside me was like, take off his socks. It was a nice day. I was like, take off his socks. I took off my shoes and I held his hand and put him on the ground. And Savanna, when I tell you, like, it just seemed like his whole being lit up. And till today, one of Donald's favorite things to do is walking on barefoot on the ground. Now, from the
I'm sorry,
program,
Somi, to pause you, but I'm having trouble hearing. I don't know if anybody else is. The volume went low. Let me see if it's on my. I'm sorry, Somi.
that's okay. Give us a moment, everybody, to make sure that she can hear me properly and you guys are hearing me properly as well.
Okay. I turned everything up on my end. Let me see if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
No.
No?
No. Like, I hear you, but, like, you're really low.
Okay.
Someone says they can hear you. Okay.
All right.
I'm just going to go like this.
So anyhow, here was the situation. His whole being lit up. And to date, one of Donald's favorite things to do, he doesn't like to wear shoes. If he has a preference of not wearing shoes, just last summer here in New York, we went to a park, and the first thing he said was, "Mom, I'm going to take off my shoes." And I said, "Go for it." And I know a lot of people are looking at me like, oh my gosh, he's going to take off his shoes. He could step in dog poop and he could step in this and, and I said, well, he's a really smart kid. And, I've trained him to be aware of his surroundings. And if he does step on dog poop, we can wash it. So even just that element of him, and one of the things he said to me, he said, "Mommy, just touching the earth with my feet, it grounds him in a way that, and just being out in nature or just smelling different sounds and connecting to things that are present moment brings an element of calm to him that in other things may not do it as quickly. So when I talk about the grounding exercises, and I did this as part of my mental wellness challenge, I asked people to pick, I think I gave like 10 different techniques or 10 different things that you could use throughout your day to ground you. And I remember a good friend of mine said to me, I so appreciate this challenge, specific one, because it has helped me keep my sanity today. And I love that because here's the thing, it's like, what is our life if we're going through it with just not being able to enjoy it, like fully experience it and enjoy it and remember. Think about it. I talk to people all the time and you ask them, like, how was your day? What did you do today? And they're like, well, let me think. We can't even remember what we're doing because we're not present in it. We're not living our lives. We're just there. And so the grounding techniques are a way, like I said, it's not just about mental illness or mental health. It's things, practical things we can do every single day throughout our day to ensure that we are present in our lives, that we remember the smell of our food, remember that song that was playing in the car when we drove to that appointment, or we remember that stranger that we met on the street, especially here in New York. I can remember the freckles in their face. Those are all present moment things, and those things ground you because it immediately takes you from reliving the past over and over or thinking about the future over and over. And by the way, I want to say, I can't remember, I want to say it was Thich Nhat Hanh or somebody from the Eastern wisdom tradition that said, part of depression is living in the past and part of anxiety is living in the future. And so the present moment being, playing on the word present is a gift to us. And if we are willing to embrace that gift every day and be present in it, it has so much more to offer us than the past or the future.
Well, it's funny you say that about Donald and like him wanting his feet to touch the earth. I remember during it was during COVID. Well, I mean we're still in COVID, but like lockdown. We were me and my mom were watching a docuseries on Netflix with Zac Efron. And I don't remember the name of it, but the guy he was with who is into yoga and grounding and all that, after every trip, after he gets off a flight, he just wants to take off his shoes and run in a field somewhere and just have his feet feel the ground just for a moment. I mean, he has to go back in the car because he has other things scheduled, but just to take that moment to ground himself and do all those wonderful things.
And it could be simple as a lot of people drink coffee. We are a coffee society, or tea, or whatever is your favorite beverage. But think about, when was the last time you remember, like a lot of us drank coffee this morning. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know a lot of people drank coffee this morning. We wouldn't have to coffee.
Me neither. I drink water.
But every time I visualize people drinking, or I see people drinking coffee, I ask myself, can they feel the warmth of that hot beverage through the cup? Can they smell the scent of it? When it touches their lips, like, is it something that they remember? Because a lot of times it's like, I had to, again, many years of practice. Again, the ideas were shifting from mental health to mental wellness. And I remember as a grad student in the mental health field, and I'm eating like this. And I'm just like, well, wait a second. I'm not living these things that I'm expressing to my clients or to people that I know. Where's the mindfulness in that? Where is the grounding in that? I don't even remember what the food smelled like. I don't even remember what it tasted like. And so just those elements, and cold water, drinking a nice, refreshing cold water during a summer day and feeling what it feels like to go through the body and really if you're feeling really hot, and cool it down. Interesting enough, I was just talking to Donald yesterday, and he was having a distressing moment. Excuse me, everybody. I'm practical, so I use things from my life and from my experiences with my clients to help people conceptualize what I'm talking about. But I'm talking to him. He's having a distressing moment, and I say to him, "What do you need right now? What is it that would help you to?" I can sit with you in the distress and in the discomfort,
Mhm.
or you tell me, what is it you need? And he's like, and I said, how does it feel for you in your body when you do get angry? And he said, Mom, my head gets kind of hot. And I said, okay. And I said, well, do you have any ideas of how I can help with that, or what would be helpful for you right now? Now, granted, this is an individual that grew up with a woman that is very intentional in raising him. So the normal child or the regular child may not be able to answer these questions, but I trained him quite a bit, if you will. And we've had lots of conversations about this. And so I said to him, I said, what do you need right now? And he says to Mom, he said, Mom, I think if I run my hand under some cold water, I think that will help. So he walked away. He went into the bathroom. I don't think he was gone more than a minute or so. And he just ran his hand under cold water. That's grounding. And when he
Yeah.
came back and I said, okay, what did you do? And he said, I just put my hand under the water and I felt it and I felt what it felt like. And I, let it kind of help me shift from where I am and bringing me back in the present. And that's all it took. So for everybody, it's different. And it
Yeah.
takes connecting and
Hmm.
having, whether a good counselor, a good therapist, or whatever, to figure out what works for you. And then to implement that in the times, not just times when you're distressed, but having that in your toolboxes of mental wellness things and,
Right.
having that available, if you will.
Well, let me show you a chart because I think you've seen this chart, but it was a chart that we made before meeting you when we were getting some help from NROC, which is NRIPE on campus. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this would help a lot of people who don't know how to ground quite yet, like
Okay.
us. So can I
Mm-hmm.
grab that real quick?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Go ahead. So while Savanna is, getting that, I do also want to say that it's important, as we're answering some of these questions and we're talking about these things. Again, we are giving suggestions of, practical suggestions of what have worked. And again, Savannah would tell you this. We've gone through a lot of different things to find out what
Oh,
works for her. It was very important to me that it was specific to her. That's why it's called individual therapy. It's not
right.
called therapy that worked for everybody else that I'm giving to Savannah. It's let's figure out what works for Savannah. Okay,
And
go
when
ahead.
finding a therapist, before I showed this, but before finding a therapist, when I was asked what kind of help I needed, I said, I know I don't need a group. I need individual help. And that's what we found. But here's the chart. We call it grounding exercises. So it's 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, and then for the last one, it's 1 thing you taste. But if you don't have anything near you that you taste or anything like that, we always did, what do you feel? What are you proud of yourself today?
That's a
And
really, really good one. And it's one that is circulated quite a bit. A lot of people use it in therapeutic ways to help people, get grounded. But like I said, don't feel like you have to be married to one technique,
right,
one way. It's very important to find out what really works for you and what grounds you, because this, again, it's not about what everybody else is doing. It's what works for the individual.
right. So the next question would be picking a good therapist.
I think you need to start this one off. I think
So
it's a good idea for you
in
to.
my beginning journeys of finding a therapist and a good one, we went through a lot. So not many of you know, but I live in the state of Arizona. State of Arizona does not have many good trauma-informed um, therapists. So a lot of the calls was, well, I don't take that insurance. How are you going to pay? Tell me your story right away. Well, that's not such a big issue. Well, I don't know why you're here. Blaming it on me. Stuff like that. So when finding a good therapist, if you first don't like their attitude, don't go with them. If you don't feel like you could connect with them, you can't, let me rephrase that. If you feel like you can connect with them, then it's a good match. Um, just there's a lot of different things with attitude, vibes, how you feel. You want to say anything else, Somi, about that one?
Oh, absolutely. Because I get this question a lot. Um, Even it's interesting when people come to me, they're shocked as to how me, you and I said to you, I said, listen, you are not going to offend me. This is not about my feelings or my ego. If we start and after the first or second session, you're like, yeah, this is not a good fit for me. I want you to be assertive. I want you to speak up. And I want you, to say, yes, this is not a good fit. It's very, very important. So one of the key things I think that is missing right now when people are picking therapists or just going into any form of therapy is we are picking people that are not culturally competent. Now, when I say
Yes.
that, I say that from a mental health standpoint. I say that from a cultural background. And I say that from a space of being trauma informed. Again, one of the things we talked about last week was going from the space of trauma awareness to being trauma informed. I think this is so important. And a lot of times when we say cultural competence, I'll give you a personal example. This is 2010, and I'm working with a nonprofit. I'm doing therapy with a lot of mostly young people from difficult backgrounds. Um, Having said that, there was this assumption, erroneous assumption made that because I am a Black woman, and I'm going to go into that just a little further, that I am culturally competent to help in the healing journey of another Black young girl or Black woman. So I am Black, but I'm Nigerian. Okay. I also have the privilege of being bicultural. I have lived in Nigeria. I was born and raised in Nigeria, but I've spent most of my time in America. So I have the benefit of my Nigerian culture and the American culture. Now, the American culture, I don't even know what that is in its entirety. But entwined in the American culture is the Black American culture. Because as a Black woman, I'm automatically assumed before someone talks to me, they normally don't guess that I am Nigerian. They just, oh, she's a Black woman, so she must be African American. So when you look at that, and I'm like, well, I am Nigerian, I am Black. I have had the privileges of obviously living and growing up in America, but I also navigating the Black American culture. So there are three elements of a culture intertwined here. But that does not mean I know the culture of another Black American.
Right.
More so, a lot of times when I would get white clients, they were often surprised that I would ask them, like, can you talk a bit more about your culture? Because culture also has to do with what goes on in your home environment. It's not just about the overall culture. And again, I don't know what the white culture is. I don't know what the Latin American culture is. I don't know what the Native American culture is. And the list goes on and on. The Asian American culture, there's so many different facets, and it's specific to that individual and to that person in that family. So it's so important that you are picking somebody that is culturally competent. And even if they are not culturally competent, they have a willingness to explore that with you,
Right.
to ask appropriate questions, to sit there with you and to learn. You
Right.
understand what I mean? But if you can find, because where you are, I don't know, it's going to be really hard to find a culturally competent therapist. But if you have someone that's willing and to answer some of these questions, that ask the appropriate questions and listen to you, that's so important. So I would say you need to find someone that's culturally competent. The other thing is you have to find someone that has done the work.
Yes.
One of the things I think that has created a stigma in the mental health field is that a lot of, and I can say this from experience, a lot of therapists need not be therapists. We take an oath to do no harm.
Mm-hmm.
If you are not in the space where you have taken the time before you go into this field to really work on transference, counter transference, your triggers, your trauma, and I'm not saying healing is one dimensional or linear, but you are further along in the process than your client because you can't get triggered. You
Right.
can't, there is something called counter transference where your client is telling you something and you're embodying that and then you're giving it back to them. There is projection in therapy. There's so many different things. So important that your therapist listen for what they're saying, look in their body language. What are the things they're saying to you? How does it feel for you? I can't stress this enough. We have become a society where we are programmed and conditioned to disconnect from our intuition and how things feel. If it feels off, if the energy is off, if it doesn't sound right, stop rationalizing it. Stop trying to make excuses. Don't do any of that. Save your time and the energy and the trauma and the re-traumatization and the drama and find. And I understand that some people need a therapist ASAP and they need it now. And this is all that's
Right.
available to them. I get
Right.
that. But now the beauty of it is we're in a digital realm
Mm-hmm.
where you can get online therapy. You can really take your time. You can vet the process. Vet your therapist.
Well, I'll tell
Interview
you guys
them.
right now, I'm in Arizona. Somi lives in New York, and we've made
Exactly.
it work before COVID.
Right. And before then, you were in Arizona and I lived in Maine. So
Yeah.
she's carried me through my moving, and that's important. And the truth about it, even pre-COVID, I had clients in Virginia and I was in Nigeria. I had clients in Maryland and I was living in Nigeria. So it's about, really interview your therapist. They work
Mm-hmm.
for you. I need people to remember that you're paying somebody money, whether through insurance or, you know, um, out of pocket to help you get to a place where you're mentally well. Don't take that lightly. This is your life. You are
Mm-hmm.
entrusting your life to somebody that you're trusting them, like, you're going to help me through this process. That is not something we should be haphazard about. We should be like, oh, this person sounds good. And even referrals, I've had people like, oh, well, this person referred. I said, that doesn't matter.
Right.
Vet me. Ask me questions. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I know this for a fact. I'm not, because I'm like, okay, I'm more, let's really do the work. I'm not a microwave therapist. Let's get to that root. I'm going to sit with you in that discomfort,
Right.
curse at me, you know, whatever you need to do. And then when we are in a space, we can unpack that, because I know as a therapist that it's the pain talking. I know that
Mm-hmm.
you're not, the stuff that's coming out sometimes has nothing to do with me. It's not personal. So those are the two big things I would say when you are looking to go into therapy. And I think, again, this is another huge one. Meet your client where your client is. This isn't about
Yes.
you. You may have to go to them. I don't know, gosh, how many clients, again, in my work with the Chibok girls, it was important for me to go to them because they had no clue what therapy was. They had all these misconceptions or whatever. I needed to go to them, and going to them, I needed to learn their culture. I needed to learn, how they said things. There's some words or things that I was doing thinking I was being helpful that was harmful. I have a really funny story for you regarding this. Very funny. And everybody's going to be like, oh my God. So I'm working, this is 2018. I'm in Nigeria. I've been recruited to go back to work with over 125 Chibok girls. And I'm working with them, and we're going through, and I'm in my office with my assistant. I hear this huge scream. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? And it was just right next to there was stairs right next to my office. So of course I run out there and I'm like, what's going on? And one of the Chibok girls, Chibok women now, let me phrase that, had fallen down on the stairs. And she was wailing and holding her knee. And so I come from a culture, when somebody falls down and somebody's in pain, you go and you try to comfort them, and you try to say words, it's okay, you use different techniques to kind of bring them down from that distressing space. So I'm doing all of this stuff, her sisters are around her, and everyone is kind of looking at me strange. Now, this is where I say being culturally competent, and granted, I had a previous experience, so something in me said, remove yourself for a second. And I pulled one of the young women aside and I said, help me understand what I'm doing wrong in this particular situation. Because what I'm doing is not effective. It's not working. Instead, it's making her wail even more. And she said to me, they used to call me auntie. She said to me, auntie, in our culture, when somebody falls and you go to comfort them, it's an indication that their life is going to be cut short.
Oh.
And I said, of course, your instinct is like, that's a whole bunch of nonsense, but I'm not thinking that. I'm like, I'm here. I'm not the expert. They've lived their culture. I have not. I'm here to learn. And so I said, okay, so what do I need to do in this moment? She said, laugh. And I said, what? And she said, laugh. And I listened to what she said. I went back to the young lady who had at this point gotten her into a classroom seated because I wanted to make sure her knee was okay. And I just started laughing. I just started cracking up. The rest of the girls joined me. And just like that, she stopped wailing.
Oh.
And I said to myself, after we stopped laughing, everybody's like, and she said to me, auntie, thank you for that. And I said, no, I need to thank one of your sisters because I did not know the implication of what I was doing. I thought by doing what I normally do, it was a comfort to you and it was going to help you move from this distressing position. Instead, I was putting you in a place of anxiety because you're like, she's thinking, oh my goodness, my life is going to be cut short because of her, cultural beliefs.
Culture.
You see what I'm saying? So for
Yeah.
me, that was such a learning experience. So from then on, whenever any of them fell, I would laugh. And I remember one of the teachers seeing me doing that, and she said to me, she's like, why are you doing that? That is so insulting. And I had to explain the process again to her. And she said, oh, that's what, I had something happen in my classroom and I did this. And she kept screaming. And I said, yeah, their culture is different from yours. We have to meet people where they are. So just, quick story. It seems like such a little thing, but it's so important to meet that person where they are, their cultural beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, whatever it is that they believe, in order to destigmatize this whole aspect of therapy and counseling?
Well, after what happened to me, I knew I needed help. So I went to the college counselors and they set me up with an Asian who had a very strong accent. I liked her and everything like that, but she met me because of her strong accent. In the beginning of the session, she says, if this doesn't work out, I have no hard feelings. But if you don't understand me, please tell me so I can repeat myself or rephrase it. And she even said at the end of the session, which I greatly appreciated, and I liked her, and I went back one more time, but then I didn't. But I was in a state of trauma, so that might happen. But yeah, she met me where I needed to be because of her culture and how she communicates and stuff like that. We do have a question about therapy we got. It says, who do we report a bad or offensive therapist to?
Uh,
I had my neurologist, when we told him about the one who I met and didn't really help me here in Arizona, he called and reported for me. So I don't know how this goes because someone else did it for me.
so interesting enough, I haven't had to do a reporting, but you have the APA, which it means two different things: the American Psychological Association and the American Psychiatric Association, depending on who you're reporting. You have also the Association for Social Workers. So I think in that realm, and I don't, again, don't have too much information about this. I don't want to, I'm just giving organizations out there. I've never been put in a position where I have to, someone has said, oh my gosh, that therapist was terrible and they did X, Y, and Z, and I had to, report that. So, but I know that there are different organizations that therapists are connected to, that you can reach out to make a complaint or say, hey, this person wasn't, keeping to the oath of doing additional harm, which again is so important. It's something that I take extremely, it's I don't take it lightly at all, because I have to live with myself.
Yeah.
And the understanding that instead of helping someone move to a space of healing, I actually did additional harm. That's something that I don't, again, I do not take lightly at all.
Okay. That was it for that. We had can we talk a bit about repressed trauma and related therapeutic approaches?
Okay, so this is one question that, repressed trauma, and again, I need to put this in context. My experiences, my understanding from an expert standpoint, both professionally and in my personal life, repressed trauma, or that use of that word, is a very controversial subject. It's controversial because in my experience, I've never met anyone with repressed trauma. So I feel that it's important to kind of break down what that means. When you say repress, you're saying that that person has zero recollection of what occurred to them. Now, and you can speak about that too. I feel that a lot of times what people are really trying to say is suppressed trauma. And what I
That's
mean
me.
by that is you have repressed versus suppressed. Suppressed, and I feel that a lot of the suppressed trauma has to do with forced suppression, whether
Mm-hmm.
through gaslighting or invalidating of people's experiences. So I'm not going to talk very much about repressed trauma because I don't have experience with that. Like I said, to date, and I have, gosh, worked with thousands of children, adolescents, and grown-ups, literally. Even with you with the Chibok girls, there wasn't a repression of the trauma. A lot of it was a suppression of the trauma. And that suppression of the trauma may be something that your brain does as a protective measure, or
Mhm.
it could be imposed on you. Here's a good example, and I don't know if you want to talk about this a little bit. But especially we live in a society right now where there is a lot of invalidation of people's experiences or the gaslighting. So it gets you to question what you experienced, how you experienced it, and you try to suppress it, or it's forced on you to suppress it. Another thing is, as a sexual violence survivor, you go to report what happens to you to the police. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So, uh, for 7 months, I didn't tell anybody. I suppressed it. Um, Somi knows I still have problems suppressing certain things, so we're working on that. But when I went to the police, it was a lot of, why'd you do this? How did this happen? Um, are you sure that's how it went down? That doesn't make sense. Um, where was it? What time? I mean, those are basic ones, but what were you wearing? That's always a big one when you're a sexual assault survivor. I don't know why. Um, and why'd you wait so long?
Mm-hmm.
That was a big one. Um, and when I came home, I found out that the reason why I didn't come, well, I mean, there's several reasons why I didn't say it sooner, but one of them was because I was in a state of trauma and what was it called? Survival mode that
Mm-hmm.
you said,
Mm-hmm.
and some things that we did. But yeah, suppression is a huge thing that I have to work with every day because I just like pushing it down. For me, it feels like whenever I feel something or something happens, I just feel like I'm pushing it down inside because I don't want to talk about it. I just want to forget about it and move on, but that doesn't help because body keeps score and your mind keeps score.
Yep. So I love what you said. It's like the questioning. Again, we, even police officers, I say this to everybody, having worked in schools, both elementary, middle, high school. I've done my, mental health services for all three areas. Having worked in a university, having worked in a private sector with nonprofit, having worked in a hospital setting, having worked in a psychiatric setting. So, having worked in a religious setting, I don't come to this very lightly and ill-informed in this element of imposed suppression, whether us or others, because who wants to, most people to go to, we don't want to sit with the uncomfortable feelings and the distressing feelings, and we don't want to keep remembering and replaying this horrific experience or event that occurred. That's normal. Nobody wants
And
to
because I
do
lived
that.
in two different states, I had to say it twice to several different men, several different people, because it happened in Colorado. I live in Arizona. They had to call the police department. They came to my house suddenly with no uh like invitation or telling us that they were coming. So,
Right. And so I say this all to say is that even our police staff, and obviously we're realizing this now a lot more so than all, but in all these different environments, being trauma informed is so important. Imagine if you had a trauma informed police officer that was questioning you. The
I
questions would
think
have
it
been
made it
much,
a lot easier and I would have reported.
right. It
With
would have
all the
made
questions, I backed out.
exactly. And because the line of questioning quite a bit, even not just from police officers, from just people in general in society, it's meant to make you question. You
Mm.
start questioning yourself, like, oh, well, maybe what I was wearing contributed to what happened to me, or maybe I'm mixing up my timeline, or maybe this. And the other part to suppression of the experience or what the event has to do with trauma. Just is a healing process. When something traumatic happens to you, it's not, we talked about this last time, it took a while for you, and it's still pieces of it are coming back to you. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I remembered every single detail at that time. And some
Right.
people do, and everybody's different. But some people don't remember because their memory, even as a survival mechanism, has decided we're going to shut this out and we're going to suppress this. So a lot of details may not come to you right at the same moment. So that's why it's a process, and you continue to explore gently the trauma narrative as the client is willing and able to explore that. So today you may tell me, and that's the other thing that a lot of law enforcement do. Let's say you said, oh, I was wearing a blue skirt on that day.
Right.
But then you remember that the skirt wasn't, it had, maybe in your state of disassociation, maybe in the state of the lighting or whatever, and in the state of survival, or the state of you going numb, in the state of your trauma in that moment, because a lot of things are happening to you. You're in shock. You can't believe this is happening. There's so much flooding you. You miss that detail. Like, it's not that you even missed it. It's like, so to negate, like, oh my gosh, she's lying. The skirt was really like purple.
Right.
Well, do you see what I'm saying? Now, it's one
Or
thing if
there's,
go ahead.
I was going to say, or there's the ones who tell their story or change their location because of the questioning. They're scared.
Yes, a lot of fear is attached with when you're reporting. So for me, again, if you have a trauma-informed law enforcement officer, and while they're questioning you, somebody that, if they're not trauma-informed, I feel like collaboration with mental health individuals, being present when you're taught. So these are little things we can do to, help survivors come forward, report these things. And then even this whole concept, I hear this all the time, whether with children, with women, even with men that don't come forward right away. And we're like, well, why did you wait so long? Well, let's see. Society doesn't actually say, yes, come and report, and we will believe you without taking you through the mud. Think about it. We have a current situation right now in New York. The first woman that came out, people kind of dismissed her.
Yeah.
It took a second and a third woman to come out. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Our governor is, grappling with some sexual harassment, sexual, assault allegations. And that has been with our former president and our current president and presidents before that. The element of we are in a lot of times we're in male dominated societies, and as when power is involved and power dynamics are involved, there's a lot of fear, and then it's the questioning, and it's an interrogative aspect of it. So we haven't given people the comfort to say, this happened to me and I'm going to be believed. Now, have there been instances, and they're very, very few, where somebody had fabricated something? Absolutely. However, those are so few that for us to use, anybody using those as grounds to silence anyone, especially children, coming forward about being assaulted in any way, shape, or abuse, is something that I just don't, we have to change this about our society. So
And
again,
that's why Title IX was invented, because of the small amount of people who fabricated about what happened and wanted their grades to be removed because they got bad grades. So they made up a story. And so that's why Title IX is here to this day.
Okay. So, I mean, those, again, for everyone listening, again, this whole idea of us talking, Savanna and I have been working together since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And the recipe has worked, if you will. um, and it's worked because I've listened to her, I've connected with her,
Yep.
and there's a lot of love involved in the kind of care that an experience that I want her to have as a human being, not as a sexual assault victim or survivor, but as a human being. And I think if we keep that in the forefront, that, you know, we're dealing with human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And just today, one of the things I was telling one of my other clients is that I want to be a part of anything that ensures that nobody is in a constant state of recovering from their childhood
Yeah.
or their adulthood. You
Yeah.
know, we have a lot of adults recovering from childhood. We have a lot of adults that have rationalized, minimized their abuses, their trauma because of societal programming, conditioning, and just because we all think like nobody will believe us. Nobody will believe you. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to listen.
Yes.
We want to intentionally connect with people,
Mm-hmm.
and give them safe spaces
Right.
to be able to tell their stories in the and being able to sit there with them in that the distress of those emotions and everything that may come with it. And that requires you as a mental health professional to be in a good space yourself, which goes
Mm-hmm.
back to the first question: self-care for your
Yep.
client, self-care for yourself.
Yep.
I cannot stress that enough. I take mental health breaks several times throughout the day because what people don't realize, I got asked this question when I presented at the American Psychiatric Association in 2018. They were like, how do you work with 120 traumatized young women and stay sane and stay connected? And I said, self-care.
Yep.
It's virtually impossible because you're hearing so much.
Mm-hmm.
And what
Yeah.
happens to that information? It gets stored.
Right.
You have to
Yes.
remember it, you know? So what am I doing to be in a good, solid, mentally well space to be able to provide what my clients need? So again, we're just trying to create a better space. Obviously mental health, mental wellness is a buzzword right now, especially after COVID. But not all tactics, not all approaches, not all therapists have the understanding and are informed to ensure that their clients and the people they work with are they're mentally well, and they're leading their clients to a mentally well space.
Right. Should we answer this one last question and then
Okay, we
hop
got
off?
about minutes.
All right. If I experience trauma and my family is my support, how should they be involved in my therapy and healing?
Oh, this is a really good one. I wish we had talked a bit and maybe we're skipping a week. Next time, I think we should explore this even more.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer you do not do therapy with a trauma victim or survivor without the integration of family, because
Yes.
you can speak on this. Their distress affects the whole family unit, and it may trigger the whole family unit of their suppressed trauma.
Yeah.
So if you're able to do family sessions, if you're able to do psychoeducational sessions with the families on how to appropriately, so because a lot of families don't know. They
Right.
have no clue. This is all new to them. The event kind of just knocked the wind out of the whole family. So the whole family structure is altered. and it's disrupted in a very tangible way. So any therapist that is working with a trauma victim and survivor and is not integrating the family in some way is not really helpful in the sense, because you're putting it on the client to, in their state of shock or healing, to now be the one to educate their families and tell their families, this is what I need and this is what you need to do. And I'll speak of your mother.
Yeah.
Was just, I called her today. I told her that she was
She is.
like, she's just a badass mom in the sense that she sat there. It was hard. She was willing to learn. She was willing to try. I mean, we went through so many different things. Try this.
Yep.
There was.
You should have seen how many Amazon boxes came.
I mean, we tried different things. And even in the moment of your distress, I would say, hey, Georgie, try this. And she would try that. And I would say, what's the reaction? And she would say, yeah, I don't know. She took to that. She's still kind of in very much distress. And I would say, okay, try this. And we would try this. And your mom reminded me today of something that I asked her to do, which is a form of Chinese reflexology that, again, because I'm an integrative medicine provider certified, I incorporate a lot of different things because, again, if it's going to be helpful for someone, why are we opposed to it? So it has to do with the center of your palm and coconut oil and lavender. So lavender as an essential scent actually calms the central nervous system of your brain. The smell of it, it's relaxing. It sends waves to your brain saying, okay, calm down. The coconut is an inflammatory oil in many different things. I use coconut on my hair, on my face. I use coconut oil with cooking. It's used for massaging. So it was a matter of taking coconut oil, putting a little lavender essential oil on it. And then I said, massage the middle of her palm. And then I was also like, massage the tips, but tried as much as possible to keep pressure on the middle. So this is a Chinese reflexology technique that helps to bring calm. And today, for the first, I remember her saying this in the moment last time, but she reminded me of this today. She's like, Somi, do you remember like just doing that? It was so effective for Savanna. Because we use the bells, we use breathing techniques. There were so many different things, and you were patient enough. And there were times you're like, okay, this lady doesn't know what she's doing. It was never about that. It's like, okay, we gotta find your specific therapeutic toolbox. What works for Savanna? So again, if I didn't have the support of Savanna's mother, her father at one point, I was on the phone with him, your sister, your grandparents, the therapist, Maisel, and everybody.
Miss Maisel, yes.
Miss Maisel, there were times I was like, okay, get Miss Maisel, pull her on her lap, whatever the case may be. It was a family affair. And there's an aspect of that called integrative family systems, but that's a little different. But what I'm referring to is, especially with children, no therapist should be working with a child if the family's not involved.
Right.
Who's your reinforcer? You're not there with the client. Who reinforces and ensures that all the things you're teaching this client are being used and implemented? That's another reason why sometimes therapy fails a lot. It's because we do not bring the family unit into it, who are also affected. You have to think, all of a sudden they're like, my baby has just experienced this horrific thing and I'm so helpless. I can't do anything about it. I can't take away the distress. And that was the beauty about your mother and your family, is that you guys were willing to sit with all of that and work through it. So again, I guess it's we can talk even more, but not in this session. But that's such a huge, important question that someone asked. There is no therapy with trauma survivors and victims, without the integration of the family system.
Right. And just to let you guys know, Somi adapted to my love of animals and what I knew from animal assisted therapy and integrated it into our therapy sessions, which I was so grateful for because I love animals so much.
And that, again, like I said, it's, you gotta meet your client where they are. When people tell me or about the experiences, sometimes I'm just in shock, like, what in the world are we doing? That's why a lot of people are really messed up, because they're going to these quote unquote professionals and experts that are disengaged from the individual. They're doing book therapy instead of individualized therapy.
Yes.
So
I shocked Somi. I'm like, Somi, you have to go to the books again, huh? And she goes, girl, I don't even know what to do with you sometimes. I can't go back to the books. I gotta rethink this. And she figured it out.
Yeah, it requires patience, and it requires, both people to be patient and willing to do the work. I can't stress that enough. The willingness and the patience to do the work is what shifts people to wellness, as opposed to be in this vicious cycle of illness, mental health, mental illness, mental health. Again, the idea is to shift to a space of wellness. Well, it's been so amazing to have this conversation. I really hope that all people that have listened in and tuned in got something that they can take back, they can apply. Again, we will be doing this every Thursday. The questions and answers would be every other week. Next week, we're going to focus on a specific topic, just to get people, comfortable. And again, like I said, I'm very unconventional. If you're looking for textbook things that aren't practical for people, I know the textbook stuff, but I know that they're not practical. People are in pain. People are seeking peace in a very, very tangible way. And to create this space where people can be free and really be free. There's no judgment. It's emotionally safe for you to say, I don't know. It's emotionally safe for you to have no question is stupid, ever. I think the stupid aspect of is not asking the question. And, let's continue to pour into each other and link arms and ensure that our journey here on earth is memorable and is present.
Yes. Presence is key.
Yes. All right, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you. Savanna, I love and appreciate you, and the healing continues.
Yes, it does. Always remember, listen, love, connect. I messed up.
All right. All right. Bye.
All right, bye. How do I end it?